From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you're with us. Good discussion on hand tonight. We're talking about growth, and that's certainly something that's worthy of discussion in Nashville as we continue to grow. Oracle is the latest big business to say that it's coming to Nashville, and a lot of debate surrounds that. What does that mean for our city? Affordable housing and jobs and all kinds of things, taxes. What does it mean? Obviously, there's support for it. There's also concern about what that means. And tonight we are going to be talking with Charlane Oliver. She is with the Equity Alliance, co-founder of the Equity Alliance, joining us via Zoom. There you are. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben, for having me on again.
I know. I'm glad to have you on again. And all right, we'll start with, before we get into all of that, the Equity Alliance once again. What is the Equity Alliance?
So we are a Tennessee-based nonprofit that we unapologetically build Black political power, and we seek to keep our government in check. It's simple as that. We're here to mobilize people to action, particularly our Black Tennesseans, to action to be more civically engaged in their democracy. But also we know that it's twofold. We want folks to vote, but we also want our elected representatives to be accountable. So we are here to hold our elected officials who represent our interests accountable, especially here today when we're talking about economic development and growth of Nashville.
And when did the Equity Alliance start? I know you've been on the show a few times, and I appreciate that, but give us the history again. I think it's quite interesting.
Yes, so we were founded in November 2016, a week after the presidential election results, and we wanted to really change the way that the Black electorate is engaged. We feel that Black voices are ignored and overlooked and underserviced, and so our votes are taken for granted, and we don't see material change. And so we wanted to disrupt and change the status quo on how politics is done and how business is done. So we started with, pure passion and 100% volunteer support over the years, and has been able to gain and grow a movement across Tennessee where we've been able to gain victories in terms of registering over 100,000 people to vote for the 2018 midterms. We've been able to gain big victories against voter suppression in our state. We've been able to end or repeal laws that criminalize large-scale voter registration. And just recently, we were able to expand access for the November 2020 election to make sure people could vote safely during the pandemic by expanding access for absentee ballots. And then most recently, with our state legislature, repeal and hold off an anti-protester bill that attacked our First Amendment rights. So we're out here not only looking out for people's democracy, but ensuring that our government is equitable, on all levels.
And so as an organization that's registering voters, when you speak, people tend to take note. And so here we are now, we're talking about growth in Nashville, most recently Oracle. What are your thoughts about, I guess, where we are with growth, but what are your thoughts about Oracle?
So, over the last 10 years, Nashville has experienced exponential growth in terms of population growth. The landscape of our city is literally changing, but we are seeing a decline in how the city is benefiting everyday Nashvillians. We're seeing rising costs of living, our housing. We're being displaced. We're seeing sort of tourism being the main sort of selling point to come to Tennessee and to come to Nashville. And that is all sort of being insulated into the urban core, middle core of Nashville. And so the situation with Oracle is that we want to make sure that our city officials are doing business that is a win for Nashvillians, for the people who have been living here for decades, who have seen the growth, but unfortunately have not been able to benefit in the prosperity of that growth. So we're here to advocate on behalf of folks who are wanting to take advantage of the jobs that Oracle says that they're bringing to Nashville. We want to also make sure we're protecting surrounding neighborhoods that may see gentrification rapidly change as Oracle brings its campus here. We're also wanting to protect the worker to make sure that they are being paid livable wages, but also diversifying the workforce that Oracle will be hiring to make sure that, again, Black Nashvillians are being considered and intentional in the growth that Oracle is going to bring for Nashville.
You're concerned about whether Oracle hires enough minority workers. Is that right?
That's correct. And I want to be very, very clear. The Equity Alliance, we are very supportive of economic growth. Like that is a good thing for our city. It's a good thing to have a thriving city where the people who are running Nashville get to benefit from it. What we are asking and what we are concerned about is making sure that the deals that we have done in the past, we have an opportunity to do something different. We have an opportunity to make sure that Oracle is intentional in matching what their words say with what they're actually going to do once the deal is sealed. We want to make sure that of those 8,500 jobs that they say that will be estimated to come here, how many of those will actually go to Black talent? We know that Oracle has a diversity problem. Only 2 out of 140 of their senior executives are Black, which is a problem, only less than 1%. We know that there are no Black people on their board of directors, and there are no Black folks in their senior leadership. So that's kind of a problem. We want to make sure Oracle is reflective of Nashville. We want to make sure, as we're 30% of the population, Black people are, and people of color, when we talk about Latinos, they're a rising demographic in the city as well. So we want to make sure that they're reflected in being good corporate citizens.
So you're not using the political clout that you have to say, don't do this deal. Is that right? You're using the clout you have to try and push Oracle to be more diverse. And in other words, it sounds like you believe they're going to be here, and you just want them to be reflective of the city. Is that kind of right, or what would you say? You may say it better.
So it's more so necessarily. It's more so we're talking to our city officials who are doing business on our behalf. They are managing the people's taxpayers' money, and we want to make sure that the deal is a win for Nashville. So we have leveraging power and we have negotiating power. What happens is a lot of times we act as if the city and the state has no sort of power to leverage when these companies want to come to our city. So we should be making sure that we're negotiating on behalf of the taxpayers, not sort of begging a company to come here when Nashville's great already. And so our message is do business where the deal is best for Nashville. Making sure that you are engaging your electorate, making sure that you're engaging taxpayers, because this will be using a portion of taxpayer dollars in this deal. So we want to make sure that, yes, Oracle gets what they want out of it, but let's make sure that we get what we want out of it. Because the reality is they're going to have a massive 60-acre campus along the banks of downtown Nashville next to Nissan Stadium. That is going to impact traffic. That's going to impact our infrastructure. That's going to impact the neighborhoods and surrounding it. It's going to impact our school systems. And we want to make sure that as that growth and capacity is happening, that we are in a position to make sure that our taxpayer dollars can also take on that growth.
Yeah, it's going to be a 65-acre campus, $1.2 billion proposal for this campus, 8,500 jobs, the average annual salary, $110,000 a year. Do you feel like Metro is pushing back enough? Do you feel like you're making headway with our elected officials to get the company to do some of the things you're asking of that company? Or kind of where do you think things stand right now?
I think right now they're in a marketing campaign to sell the city of Nashville on why this is a good deal. But I think that the reason why that is a flawed process is because we should have known about this deal in the first place. You shouldn't have to sell us on something. So that's problematic number one. So yeah, that's where we are with it.
Yeah, you're probably frustrated. I know you wouldn't be alone. That you feel like this deal it was already done, and then it's announced. You'd like a few more tweaks or adjustments or improvements to the deal that's out there. You'd like more say in how this all comes about.
Absolutely. I mean, I would love to see more intentionality around some more specifics. The deal sounds very, very vague. We know that there are 8,500 jobs, but they can't specify how many of those will be local hires, how many of those will be recruited from our HBCUs. We have very great institutions right here in Nashville. So how are we making sure that X number of jobs will go to engineers that are recruited from our, TSU and Fisk and MTSU and Vanderbilt and Belmont, all of our great schools that are right here in Middle Tennessee? How do we make sure that we are getting those jobs, not just the relocation jobs that are going to be coming from Austin, Texas and California and other places? So there's that.
And that's a great question. How do you make sure of that? I guess you're saying you don't know. Is that right?
We don't. And all we are left to do is just trust that they will be good on their word. But I think we can do better than that. I think we can put in some specifics. We can have some agreements. We can have Oracle say and commit in writing that these are the things we're committed to do. And I think our elected officials should hold them to that. I think that should be part of the deal. But we also have to think about the sort of minority jobs impact. We also need to think about the pipeline that we are building. Oracle, this needs to be a good deal for them as well. So how are we building a pipeline to make sure that we have people right here in Nashville who are prepared to take on those jobs that Oracle has? We have, our school systems. How can they make sure and invest in our K through 12 education system to make sure that we are training up middle schoolers and high schoolers in STEM so that they can go on to be prepared for these jobs? How can we work with not just our four-year institutions, but our 2-year technical colleges and our community colleges to come up with some partnerships there? I think we can go further with our partnerships other than just say, hey, we're going to work with your HBCUs. I think we can do better than that.
And do you feel like that can be written into whatever the final agreement is? I mean, it seems like we're moving pretty far down the road. You're here talking about it, which is important. But is it? Mm-hmm. Do you see that it's going to be written in somewhere as you wish? Or is it more just we put pressure on them kind of continually from the outside?
Anything's possible, Ben. If we can have jobs incentives where we're paying companies per job for them to guarantee that they're going to fill by X amount of years, and I think then, yes, that can be done. In previous deals, they've had guarantees where they say X number of jobs will cost this amount of money, and then the city will pay the company for those jobs that they bring and hire. That can happen. It can happen.
Okay. All right. Let's take some calls. We'll open up the line here. 615-737 plus 615-737-7587. What are your thoughts? Let's go to Cindy, who's been waiting on the line. Cindy.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Oh, he's going on break.
No, I'm not going on break, Cindy. Turn down your TV.
Okay.
All right.
Hi. I just wanted to say that, like, when the convention center came, they promised, and all these other jobs, like Beretta and stuff like that, promised that they would pay $16, $17 an hour, and they took advantage of the minorities, and including myself. I consider myself a minority, and gave us $10, $11 an hour. And how are you supposed to survive when the rent is so high? They're not going to do nothing but shove us out to another place out of Nashville and bring in people. Do you not believe that?
That's, I think, the primary concern. All right, so.
Right.
And what was your experience? What happened to you? What do you mean?
I went to the convention center, and I was told that I worked for them now. And I'm going, what does that mean? And they said, you work for us, the plantation. And then they what do you mean by that? And I've never heard this. What do you mean by that? You know, because I wasn't raised to look at anybody but by their heart, not by the way, their color or anything like that. I wouldn't look that way. We're all the same to me.
All right, lastly, you're breaking up. You're breaking up, Cindy. And what was your job there? What were you doing?
I waited on all the customers that come in there on the conventions and books and this, that, and the other. And it's still nobody comes from that.
All right, you're breaking up too badly. Call back. Maybe we can get a better line. But all right, you hear the frustration from Cindy. I wondered if she helped build it. That obviously wasn't it. She was working there after it was built. What do you think about what Cindy's saying?
I think her story is all too real and so too familiar for a lot of Nashvillians. Unfortunately, we're sold one thing, and then what actually ends up happening is another. We don't know if those jobs are paying a livable wage, and we know that the rising cost of rent is going up because folks like her are being pushed out to the outskirts of the county and even to surrounding counties. And the folks who are coming in are relocations, people moving from outside states where the cost of living is much higher. And then they see our rent prices and they're like, oh, I can pay this. And it's nothing for them. It's a drop in the hat. And so we're stuck in the middle. We being the people who have lived here for years. So yeah, that is a real thing. That is a real concern of the folks sort of from the outside coming in, making Nashville not as affordable for us.
The concern with that is that you said earlier you are pro-growth. And Bob Mendez was on here, Councilman at Large, the other day, and he's like, Nashville is going to grow no matter what. We're going to grow. We're going to see people move from the coast. They're going to move to a city like this. A deal like Oracle is a good deal. If you're going to have a company move here, it's going to pay, annual salaries, solid, really good annual salary. They're promising some good things. So. Yeah. When people push back, the concern is, are we anti-growth? If we push them away, do we get something worse? And so what do you say about that concern?
It's not anti-growth. It's pro-people. That's all it is. It's pro-people and making sure that the taxpayers who pay into the system are actually getting real tangible benefits. I'm not sure why that is so hard to understand in a democracy. So, no, we're not anti-growth. We just want to make sure our government works for us. And like I said, not at the expense of us, not at the expense of people who have lived here for years but can't afford to live here anymore. That is a real concern. People who are college graduates and can't afford to buy their first home because it's $300,000, $400,000 to buy a home in Nashville. That is a real concern. How do we make sure that we are making sure that rent and housing prices are affordable? We're building affordable units. How do we make sure that companies who are going to be a part of the community invest in the community? Our education system, our infrastructure, our affordable housing, jobs. Those are the things we care about.
And lastly, before we go to break then, all right, so is there something you would like to see specifically added to this Oracle deal? Is there wording you would like to see added? Are you confident something like that can be added? Or it feels like it's already moving down the line.
It does.
Yeah, what about that?
Well, one, would love to see more community input and more intentional effort around getting that input from community citizens. I know we like to say, well, there was a public hearing before the Industrial Development Board. There's going to be a public hearing before, Metro Zoning and Planning Department has to weigh in. There's going to be other Metro Council meetings and things like that. That's great, but how are we making sure that people even know about that? How are we making sure that we're being intentional about going out into the community and seeking input? The deal is not done yet, so let's not act like it. There's one. So I would love to see more community input around that. And then secondly, would love to see intentional partnerships with our HBCUs, and would love to see a number, literally a number that you can commit to hiring minority talent. Not only just talent, but we're talking about suppliers, vendors. This is going to be a deal, not just when the campus is built, but all of the construction that is going to come with this project. Even afterwards, you're going to have to need people to clean the offices. You're going to need folks for catering. Like, those should be minority contracts too. That's how we invest in the city, do business with local folks, but also minority folks, minority businesses.
Interesting. Okay, very good. All right, well, that gives us an idea of what we're talking about tonight. So we'll open up the phone lines. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.